Lives are at stake for both firefighters and civilians during high-stress situations. These are some things that can overcome sensory overload that might happen to firefighters during these operations. My name is Luke Magnus. I'm a lieutenant with Fair Oaks Fire Department. I've been in the fire service for over 2 years now. I'm also a certified fire instructor through Oklahoma State University. Team building is one of the biggest things for firefighters in order to overcome sensory overload. And there's some things that we're going to talk about on how to overcome that. The objectives of this class will acclimate firefighters to situations that occur in structure fires, which is one of our most dangerous calls. Another thing is to promote team building and help mold relationships between firefighters that will be working together. And our third objective will be to talk about the effects of sensory overload and how to overcome those things that affect you. Matt Heatrich and Bob Meehan, in their article, Team Building Beyond the Fire Scene from Fire Engineering, they talk about how team building is so important for firefighters and that it's vital that firefighters become a good team and they learn to work together, because if firefighters do not work together, then the operations will always fail. So what exactly is sensory overload? Sensory overload is simple, but it can make a huge difference on scene of structure fires. Sensory overload is things in the atmosphere or in the environment that firefighters are in that just completely overloads them physically and mentally. Inside structure fires, you can't see around you. There's smoke from floor to ceiling. There's always loud noises. There's intense heat. And there's also just the stress of trying to get in and save a life if someone is trapped, or to save someone's house if it's on fire. Sensory overload is also very stressful even after a fire, because it can just completely exhaust the firefighters and it causes some other mental issues. Sensory overload affects the firefighter's focus most of all. Big things that happen is firefighters get turned around in a house, or the smoke overtakes them and there's hot heat, and they get starting to panic and they forget where they're at and they don't know how to get out of a room, and that focus just becomes gone. And that's where it's very important for firefighters to remember their training and what they're doing and how to get themselves out of that situation. Another thing is it causes serious confusion. Confusion sets in real easy with this, especially once firefighters become panicked. And another thing is that it presents problems for firefighting operations, especially if you're in a rescue operation while the house is on fire to save someone, but then sensory overload sets in on your firefighters that are inside, and you have more people to save, you have more problems to take care of, which results in you having to send more firefighters into a house just to save those other firefighters, as well as the civilians you're trying to get out. David F. Peterson, in his article System Overload from Fire Rescue Magazine, talks about how much this sensory overload just completely overloads the firefighters, causing all that confusion and that loss of focus that makes it very hard for firefighters to complete their jobs. So how we combat this sensory overload is we're going to train. Training is one of the biggest ways to do it, and how we do that is we make guys wear all their gear that I have here, their bunker pants, their helmet, their masks, and their Nomex hoods. It's very important that we make all these guys wear all their gear and get used to wearing it, because the best thing to be is comfortable in your gear and know what you're going to wear, know what you're going to feel like, and that makes it easier when you're in those high stress situations. We also want to try and recreate those situations as much as we can, also while being safe. If we can recreate a dark room where firefighters can't see, then that makes it a lot easier to try and get them into that feeling on how it'll feel, how they'll see, what it'll be like, so they can overcome that. A good training exercise that we've developed is taking like 3 to 5 firefighters in a group and making them all have to work together in a confined space where they're blinded. We like to put them in a dark room. Of course, they'll be wearing their masks just like this, and we'll take this Nomex hood that keeps the heat off their neck, but we'll actually turn it around and put it on their mask, so that way they cannot see through their mask. And what that does is it simulates what it's like in a fire. It causes that look of smoke. You can barely see through it, but you really can't see anything, which is what it's like inside of a house fire.